Last time, we quickly introduced Brouwer's intuitionism, where the map consists of temporal and causal sequences. In particular, we do not merely solve decision problems, i.e., decide if something is true or not. We instead construct from the temporal and causal sequences a possible sequence, called a means, to achieve a desired goal sequence. A more standard example, instead of getting a hamburger, is Euclid's Elements. Euclid's Elements describes a map of possible sequences and a few constructions thereof. In it, Euclid limits himself to a few sequences of construction with a compass and straight edge, from which he builds more sequences of construction. As a simple example, Euclid can construct sequences such as the hexagon. He also treats equality as a construction of sequences. In this way, if the reader can understand and follow the small constructions, the reader can also understand the big constructions. Let's show the proof of Euclid's Elements, second book, proposition 5, as treated by Netz. In the ekthesis, a construction is given with which to describe the goal of the construction. Let some line, namely the line alpha beta, be cut into equal segments at the point gamma and into unequal segments at the point delta. In diorismos, the goal is then described within this construction. I say that the rectangle contained by the lines alpha delta, delta beta, with the square on the line gamma delta, is equal to the square on the line gamma beta. In the kataskoye, the construction is extended to hold enough information for the proof. For on the line gamma beta, let a square be set up, namely the square gamma epsilon zeta beta, by a construction of book 1, proposition 46, and let the line beta epsilon be joined. And through the point delta, let the line delta eta be drawn parallel to either the lines gamma epsilon or beta zeta, as by construction of book 1, proposition 31. And through the point theta, again, let the line kappa mu be drawn parallel to either of the lines alpha beta or epsilon zeta. And again, through the point alpha, let the line alpha kappa be drawn parallel to either of the lines gamma lambda or beta mu, by construction of book 1, proposition 31. After giving this construction, finally, in the apodeixis, the equality is shown. Note that equality is also shown constructively by Euclid as follows. Since the complement gamma theta is equal to the complement gamma zeta by proposition 43 of book 1, let the square delta mu be added as common. Therefore, the whole gamma mu is equal to the whole delta zeta, but the area gamma mu is equal to the area alpha lambda, since the line alpha gamma 2 is equal to the line gamma beta. Let the area gamma theta be added as common. Therefore, the whole alpha theta is equal to the gnomon. Let the area lambda eta be added as common, which is equal to the square on the line gamma delta. Therefore, the gnomon and the area lambda eta are equal to the rectangle contained by the lines alpha delta and delta beta and the square on the lines gamma delta. But the gnomon and the area lambda eta as a whole is the square gamma epsilon zeta beta, which is the square on the line gamma beta. Therefore, the rectangle contained by the lines alpha delta, delta beta, with the square on the line gamma delta, is equal to the square on the line gamma beta, concluding our proof. Could you follow the constructions in your head? But, of course, a demon can still trick us collectively when following these instructions. In fact, Euclid assumes, without proof or explicit assertion, that two non-parallel lines meet at exactly one point. This proposition would not hold in hyperbolic geometry, for example. So how can we reduce the construction of a map, as Euclid did, outside of our map? Chapter 8. Panini. If there was one culture that demons feared, it must be that of ancient India. They created the first man who would reduce the construction of sequences outside of his mind. Through hymns, Indian pundits passed along old sequences of wisdom in the form of fables. A remarkable hymn, though probably one that came after Panini, is the Sutra of Transcendental Wisdom in 25,000 Lives. In one section, two demons are mentioned that rip apart all limbs of a sleeping traveler's body, one by one and replace them with those of a corpse. The traveler wakes up, understandably, with body dysmorphia and wonders if he is the same person. A wise man then tells him, as long as he can solve the same search problems, he is extensionally the same. Okay, that's not what the wise man said, but humor me with it. It serves as a foundation of equality between human maps. Anyways, there was a fear of corrupting the meaning of these hymns these pundits passed along. If the hymns were corrupted, it could corrupt the morals of the society after all, so an emphasis was placed on their correctness. This was so important to them that they created arguably the first man demons feared, the scholar Panini. He lived in Salatura in ancient India between 600 to 400 BCE and was the first one to reduce a spoken language, in this case Vedic Sanskrit, outside of his mind through a remarkable 40 pages. He created grammar rules to deduce whether a sentence is grammatically correct Vedic Sanskrit. Vedic Sanskrit has a subject-object-verb structure, so a valid sentence would be S can be turned into U, O, V, where U can be turned into a subject, for example, U can be turned into father, O can be turned into an object, for example, O can be turned into banana, and V can be turned into a verb, for example, V can be turned into eat. The whole sentence would then be father, banana, eat. English sentences, on the other hand, use a subject-verb-object structure, so you would instead use S can be turned into U, V, O. This system of arrows is called string rewriting. For example, a very simple subset of English can be written as follows. Uppercase characters are meta characters, and lowercase characters are terminal characters. A given meta character can be turned into any given sequences of meta characters and terminal characters separated by a pipe symbol. We can show that something is part of the grammar by giving a derivation. This derivation is the construction of the sentence. S can be turned into UVO, can be turned into MVO, can be turned into Kevin VO, can be turned into Kevin AVO, can be turned into Kevin Quickly VO, can be turned into Kevin Quickly Eats O, can be turned into Kevin Quickly Eats Mrs. F, can be turned into Kevin Quickly Eats Mrs. Mia. This derivation can then be checked by a machine. We call a derivation of a sequence a temporal sequence, whereas rewriting rules are causal sequences. Through repetition, we get better at creating temporal sequences, and these temporal sequences become effortless, causal shortcuts. S can be quickly turned into Kevin quickly eats Miss Mia. This is a meaningful sentence, but not a true sentence. Ideally, we want a set of rules that can only create possible constructions, just like the rules in Euclid Elements can only create possible constructions. But even then, mathematical contemplation is not a linguistic activity, so we have to be careful that we do not lose power when reducing our construction into a rewriting system. We are using rewriting systems because they are able to describe spoken language with which we already communicate our thoughts. However, this is just one of many ways of constructing sequences, and everyone might have a subjectively different opinion on how to do this. To counter this, we will need a way of transforming different systems of constructions into other systems of constructions. We will be able to do this with the K-machine, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Interlude. Let's try to make a string rewriting system for our notion of a binary number modulo 3. The binary number 0 is equal to 0 modulo 3. Further, the binary number 1 is equal to 1 modulo 3, but if we attach more zeros and ones to it, we can turn it into a binary number 0 modulo 3. The current remainder when divided by 3 is 1, and we add the meta character m1 to keep track of this. Attaching a 0 to the end of a binary number 0 modulo 3 will result in a binary number 0 modulo 3. Attaching a 1 to the end of a binary number 0 modulo 3 will result in a binary number 1 modulo 3. Attaching a 0 to the end of a binary number 1 modulo 3 will result in a binary number 2 modulo 3. Attaching a 1 to the end of a binary number 1 modulo 3 will result in a binary number 0 modulo 3. Finally, attaching a 0 to the end of a binary number 2 modulo 3 will result in a binary number 1 modulo 3. Attaching a 1 to the end of a binary number 2 modulo 3 will result in a binary number 2 modulo 3. If we have a number modulo 0, we can finish, indicated by the empty sequence. 1001, which is 9 in binary, is divisible by 3. We can prove this via a construction. S can be turned into 1 m1, can be turned into 1, 0, M2, can be turned into 1, 0, 0, M1, can be turned into 1, 0, 0, 1, M0, which can be turned into 1, 0, 0, 1. This construction can then be checked by a machine outside of the mind. If only we could also move the process of construction outside of the mind. Well, it turns out we can, with our trusty deterministic finite automaton. Take the meta-characters as states and their rules as transitions. The starting symbol S is the initial state that follows transitions to states M1 or finishes. Finishing states need an accepting state and a subsequent rejecting state in case more zeros and ones are added. Adding the remaining rules, you get the following automata. To respect the empty sequences, we simply make the state corresponding to the meta symbol M0 accepting. This is the same deterministic finite automata we have seen in Chapter 4, Building Machines. If anyone has different rules of construction, we can then compare them using the machine that checks extensional equality of deterministic finite automata. We have reduced search to the decision problem for automata. The demon looks at you amused. Not so fast. What if you have rules that have multiple 0-1 transitions, or missing them? Take as an example the following rules, where S has multiple 0 transitions and B has no 0 transitions. To solve this, we can introduce non-deterministic transitions. As long as a path exists to an accepting state given an input sequence, the non-deterministic finite automaton will accept. From this path, which is also called a trace, we can then reconstruct the derivation. In fact, we can reduce non-deterministic finite automata to deterministic finite automata using the exponential machine. We can construct a deterministic finite automata from running all states of the non-deterministic finite automata simultaneously. With this, we can solve all constructions with rules replacing a meta-character with sequences of terminal characters followed by at most a single meta-character or the empty sequence. The demon laughs out loud. You can't even turn the rule S turns into 0 S1, or the empty sequence, into a non-deterministic finite automata. This construction rule yields the following sequences: the empty sequence, the sequence 0, 1, the sequence 0, 0, 1, 1, the sequence 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, and so on. If we try, we need to somehow account how many zeros we've read, but we can only have a finite number of states. We need to add memory to the machine. It turns out we can solve this by adding stack memory to the transitions. The 0, A semicolon B transition can be read as: if the input sequence is 0 and the top element on the stack is A, you can follow this transition, remove A from the stack, and place B on the stack. We start with transitions that only add symbols to the stack, like 0, the empty stack, semicolon Z, the epsilon indicating that nothing is taken from the stack, and it does not matter what is on the stack, while Z is added to the stack. Z here indicates the first 0. For all subsequent zeros, we will add a C. As soon as a 1 is read, one C will be removed from the stack, and if there is only a Z remaining as soon as a 1 is read, we accept the sequence. If at any time a 0 is read after 1 in the input sequence, or too many 1s are in the input sequence, the machine will end in a rejecting state that reads the remaining input. In 2001, Gerold Zenizerges showed that a machine can decide whether two deterministic pushdown automata are extensionally equal, and he won the Gödel Prize for it. The demon laughs further. You managed to beat my challenge, but your attempts are futile. I can order all these deterministic pushdown automata in any order you like. I can then create a function, let's call it diagonal DPDA, that outputs yes on the empty sequence, if and only if the first machine of your list outputs no and outputs no otherwise. Further, it outputs yes on the binary sequence 0 if the second DPDA outputs no and no otherwise, and so on. This problem cannot be solved by a deterministic pushdown automata. If it could be solved by such a machine, this machine would appear somewhere in that list. On the input binary sequence corresponding to that machine, the machine would have to output no if the machine itself outputs yes, and yes if it itself outputs no. This is impossible. The demon created a decision problem that we cannot solve using a deterministic pushdown automata. However, Brouwer seems to not be concerned. We can always create the ith machine in our mind and run the ith binary input sequence on it. Then, we can simply return the opposite result of the ith machine. We can inherently solve the diagonal problem constructively in our mind. This means that constructions in our mind are more powerful than deterministic pushdown automata. However, the daemon put a much nastier surprise into our minds. This argument works for all possible list of machines that terminate. Let this sink in. This means that no list of terminating machines can decide the same decision problems that we can decide constructively in our mind. Will we succeed? To find out, please subscribe and like the video, as it helps the algorithm. Thanks.